He laughed dismissively when I placed the proposal on his desk. 3 months later, I held that same proposal as I turned him into the industry's laughingstock. This isn't just a story about a rejected idea. It's how I transformed rejection into the leverage that buried the career of the very person who dismissed it. My name is Claire Morgan, and I'm 34 years old. For the past 6 years, I've been the lead systems automation developer at Lunaris Technologies, a data analytics company nestled in the tech corridors of Austin, Texas. Our office occupies 3 floors of a sleek glass building where the coffee is always too bitter and the air conditioning perpetually fights a losing battle against the Texas heat. The morning everything changed started like any other Tuesday. I had been working nights and weekends for months, developing what I believed could revolutionize healthcare data processing. My adaptive analytics platform could predict supply chain disruptions in medical facilities while simultaneously optimizing resource allocation. It was elegant, ambitious, and according to my calculations, exactly what our clients needed. Gregory Holt, our chief technology officer, sat across from me in the sterile conference room, my bound proposal resting untouched between us. Greg was 47, silver-haired, and possessed the kind of confidence that came from years of playing corporate politics rather than building actual technology. He had climbed the ranks through strategic handshakes and well-timed presentations, while others did the heavy lifting. "Claire," he said, barely glancing at the document, "I appreciate your enthusiasm, but this is too risky. Healthcare data is regulated territory, and adaptive systems are unpredictable. We can't afford to waste resources on something this experimental." I kept my expression neutral, though my jaw tightened. "Greg, the preliminary tests show I've made my decision." He pushed the proposal back across the table. "Focus on maintaining our existing systems. That's where your talents are needed." The dismissal was complete. No consideration, no discussion, just a wall of corporate conservatism dressed up as wisdom. I watched him gather his things, noting the slight smirk that played at the corners of his mouth. He enjoyed this moment, the power of crushing ideas that threatened to overshadow his own limited vision. "Of course," I said quietly, tucking the proposal under my arm. "I understand." But I didn't understand. I understood perfectly. Greg saw my project as a threat to his carefully constructed image as the company's innovation leader. He couldn't risk someone else's breakthrough making him look inadequate, so he buried it, assuming I would meekly accept his judgment and move on. He was wrong. That evening, I remained at my desk long after the office had emptied. The cleaning crew had finished their rounds, and only the emergency lighting cast long shadows across the empty workstations. I pulled up the project files on my personal laptop, the screen's glow illuminating my determined expression. If Greg wouldn't authorize the resources, I would find another way. The beauty of working in technology was that the most powerful tools often required nothing more than time, knowledge, and determination. I had all 3 in abundance. Over the following weeks, I established a routine during the day. I maintained the existing systems as Greg had instructed, playing the role of the compliant employee. But every evening, after the last colleague had departed, I descended to the basement level where the company's servers hummed quietly in their climate-controlled environment. The basement became my sanctuary. Here, surrounded by the mechanical breathing of dozens of machines, I could work without interruption. My fingers flew across the keyboard, lines of code flowing like a river redirected from its natural course. The adaptive platform began to take shape, growing more sophisticated with each passing night. 3 weeks into my clandestine project, Ethan Brooks discovered my secret. Ethan worked in our IT infrastructure team, a quiet man in his early 30s who possessed an unusual combination of technical brilliance and genuine decency. He had stumbled upon me during one of his routine maintenance checks, finding me hunched over my laptop at 2 a.m., surrounded by empty coffee cups and scribbled notes. "Claire." His voice carried concern rather than suspicion. "What are you doing down here?" I looked up, considering my options. Ethan had always been supportive of my work, and his position gave him access to resources I couldn't obtain alone. More importantly, He had no loyalty to Greg's political maneuvering. Building something that should have been built months ago, I replied, gesturing to my screen. Want to see? Over the next hour, I walked Ethan through my adaptive platform. His eyes widened as he grasped the implications, understanding immediately why Greg had rejected it. This wasn't just an improvement to existing systems, it was a fundamental reimagining of how data analytics could serve healthcare providers. This is incredible, he whispered, scrolling through the code. The predictive algorithms alone could save hospitals millions in wasted resources. Greg called it too risky, I said, unable to keep the bitterness from my voice. Ethan shook his head. Greg's afraid. This makes everything else look obsolete, including his pet projects. From that night forward, Ethan became my silent partner. He provided server access, testing environments, and most crucially, his expertise in system integration. Together, we refined the platform, working in the shadows while Greg basked in the fluorescent light of his executive office. Our nocturnal collaboration yielded remarkable results. The adaptive platform evolved beyond my original vision, incorporating machine learning algorithms that could analyze patient flow patterns, predict equipment failures, and optimize staff scheduling across multiple facilities simultaneously. It was everything I had promised in my original proposal and more. Then came the discovery that changed everything. I was reviewing email logs for a routine security audit when I noticed unusual activity in Greg's account. Several large file transfers to an external domain caught my attention. The recipients were employees of NextGen Solutions, a startup that had recently announced plans to develop healthcare analytics software. My blood ran cold as I traced the transferred files. They included my original proposal, complete with technical specifications and implementation timelines. Greg had not only stolen my work, but was actively shopping it to potential competitors, positioning himself as the architect of innovations he had publicly rejected. The evidence was damning. Email chains showed Greg negotiating licensing deals for his adaptive platform concept. He had even scheduled a presentation for NextGen's investors, planning to unveil the technology as his own breakthrough. The presentation was set for the following week. I printed every relevant document, my hands shaking with rage and adrenaline. Greg's betrayal was complete. He had crushed my official proposal while secretly profiting from my ideas. But in his arrogance, he had left a digital trail that would prove his deception. Ethan arrived for our usual late-night session to find me surrounded by evidence of Greg's theft. His face darkened as he reviewed the emails, his typically calm demeanor cracking. He's been planning this for weeks, Ethan said, his voice tight with anger. Look at this. He's already signed a preliminary agreement with NextGen. He's selling them your work for a consulting fee. Not just my work, I corrected, a plan forming in my mind. He's selling them an inferior version. My real platform is months ahead of what he stole. The next morning, I watched Greg with new eyes during our weekly team meeting. He spoke confidently about upcoming projects, his voice carrying the false authority of someone who had never created anything original. His cologne was expensive, his suit perfectly tailored, but underneath the polished exterior was a man who survived by appropriating others' achievements. We need to focus on incremental improvements, he announced, his gaze briefly meeting mine. Revolutionary thinking is all well and good, but we build our reputation on reliable, tested solutions. The hypocrisy was staggering. While publicly preaching caution, he was privately selling my revolutionary thinking to the highest bidder. I nodded along with the rest of the team, my expression carefully neutral. That afternoon, I implemented the first phase of my counterattack. Instead of confronting Greg directly or exposing his theft through official channels, I chose a more elegant approach. I would demonstrate the platform's value so dramatically that Greg's betrayal would become irrelevant. Our largest client, Metropolitan Healthcare Network, had been struggling with supply chain inefficiencies across their 15 facilities. Their current system was antiquated, resulting in frequent shortages of critical supplies, while other items sat unused in overstocked warehouses. It was exactly the type of problem my adaptive platform was designed to solve. Without authorization and without Greg's knowledge, I integrated a modified version of my platform into Metropolitan's existing infrastructure. The integration was seamless, appearing as a routine software update to their IT staff. Within hours, the platform began analyzing their data patterns, identifying inefficiencies, and proposing optimizations. The results were immediate and spectacular. Supply chain accuracy increased by 40% within the first week. Waste reduction exceeded projections by 20%. Most importantly, the platform's predictive capabilities prevented a potentially catastrophic shortage of surgical supplies at their largest facility. Dr. Patricia Reeves, Metropolitan's Chief Operations Officer, called our CEO directly to express her amazement. Margaret Doyle, Lunaris's CEO, was a sharp woman in her 50s who had built the company from a small consulting firm into a major player in healthcare analytics. She prided herself on staying informed about every significant development within her organization. Margaret, Dr. Reeves gushed during their recorded conversation, "Whatever your team did to our systems last week has been transformative. Our supply chain efficiency has improved more in 7 days than it had in the previous year. We want to expand this solution to all our facilities immediately." Margaret's confusion was evident in her response. "Patricia, I'm not sure what specific update you're referring to. Let me investigate and get back to you." The investigation led directly to my desk. Margaret's initial assumption was that Greg had authorized an unauthorized pilot program. But when she confronted him, his bewilderment was genuine. He had no idea what Metropolitan was talking about, and his ignorance was about to become his undoing. I received the summons to Margaret's office on a Thursday afternoon. The executive suite occupied the entire top floor, its floor-to-ceiling windows offering a commanding view of Austin's skyline. Margaret sat behind her mahogany desk, her expression unreadable. "Claire," she began, her voice carefully controlled. "Metropolitan Healthcare is raving about some new system implementation. They're crediting us with solving problems we didn't know they had. Care to explain?" I had prepared for this moment. I developed an adaptive analytics platform specifically for healthcare applications. When Metropolitan mentioned their supply chain issues during last month's review, I took the initiative to test a solution. Without authorization, I confirmed. I believed the potential benefits outweighed the risks. Margaret leaned back in her chair, studying me. "And this platform, is it related to the proposal Greg mentioned rejecting several months ago?" "It's the same core technology, significantly enhanced." "Show me." For the next 2 hours, I walked Margaret through the platform's capabilities. She asked pointed questions about scalability, security, and regulatory compliance. Each answer reinforced her growing realization that she was looking at a breakthrough that could redefine Lunaris's market position. "This is extraordinary work, Claire," she said finally. "Why didn't you pursue this through proper channels after Greg's initial rejection?" The question I had been dreading. Because Greg didn't just reject it, he's been selling the concept to next-gen solutions as his own innovation. Margaret's expression hardened. "Explain." I produced the evidence I had compiled, the email chains, file transfers, and contract negotiations. Margaret reviewed each document with growing anger, her professional composure cracking as she grasped the full extent of Greg's betrayal. "He's scheduled to present his platform to next-gen's investors next week," I concluded. "He's been positioning himself as the lead developer while publicly discouraging the exact type of innovation he's trying to profit from." Margaret's response was swift and decisive. Greg was summoned to her office within the hour, confronted with the evidence of his theft. His denials were pathetic, his attempts to shift blame transparent. By the end of the meeting, he had been stripped of his research and development responsibilities and placed on administrative leave pending a full investigation. But I wasn't finished. Greg's removal was just the beginning. The following week, as Greg was supposed to be presenting to next-gen's investors, I was instead demonstrating the platform's capabilities to Lunaris's board of directors. The presentation was scheduled for the quarterly review, but Margaret had expanded the agenda to include what she called a strategic opportunity. The boardroom was packed with executives, department heads, and key stakeholders. Greg sat at the far end of the table, his face pale and drawn. He had been reinstated pending the investigation's conclusion, but his authority was gone, his credibility shattered. "Ladies and gentlemen," Margaret began, "I want to present a development that will fundamentally change our competitive position in the healthcare analytics market." I stood and activated the presentation display, my hands steady despite the significance of the moment. The screen filled with real-time data from Metropolitan Healthcare's network, showing the platform's continuous optimization of their supply chain operations. "This is our adaptive analytics platform," I began, my voice carrying the confidence of someone who had spent months perfecting every detail. "It represents a quantum leap in predictive healthcare management." The presentation was flawless. I demonstrated the platform's ability to predict equipment failures, optimize staff scheduling, and prevent supply shortages. The board watched in fascination as the system identified patterns invisible to human analysis, providing actionable insights that could save facilities millions of dollars annually. "The preliminary results from Metropolitan Healthcare exceed our most optimistic projections," I continued, clicking to a slide showing performance metrics. "Supply chain efficiency has improved by 40%, waste reduction by 20%, and cost savings are projected to reach $8 million annually across their network." Board member James Richardson, a veteran of the tech industry, leaned forward with interest. "Claire, this is impressive work. What's the development timeline for full market deployment?" "The core platform is complete and tested," I replied. "We could begin rolling out to additional clients within 6 weeks." "And the intellectual property status?" Margaret answered this question. "The platform is entirely proprietary, developed using company resources and existing within our current patent portfolio." I noticed Greg shifting uncomfortably in his seat. His theft of my original proposal had been documented and reported to the board, but the full implications were becoming clear. He had tried to sell something that was never his to sell, while the real innovation was happening under his nose. The board's enthusiasm was palpable. They understood they were looking at a breakthrough that could establish Lunaris as the dominant force in healthcare analytics. The potential revenue from licensing the platform to hospital networks across the country was staggering. "Claire," Margaret said, "I want you to head up the commercialization effort. You'll report directly to me and have full authority over the development team." The appointment was announced that afternoon. I was promoted to Director of Advanced Analytics, with a budget of $5 million and a team of 12 developers. Greg, meanwhile, was reassigned to system maintenance, essentially the same role he had tried to confine me to months earlier. The irony was not lost on anyone in the company. The man who had dismissed my proposal as too risky was now watching me implement it on a scale that would define the company's future. His career trajectory had been reversed, his influence eliminated, his reputation damaged beyond repair. 2 weeks later, I stood in the same conference room where Greg had first rejected my proposal. This time, I was leading a meeting with potential clients, including representatives from 3 major hospital networks. The platform's success at Metropolitan had generated industry buzz, and healthcare administrators were eager to learn about the technology. "The adaptive platform doesn't just analyze data," I explained to the assembled executives. "It learns from every interaction, becoming more accurate and efficient over time. It's like having a team of expert analysts working around the clock to optimize every aspect of your operations." The questions came rapidly, each one allowing me to demonstrate another aspect of the platform's capabilities. These weren't theoretical features. They were proven solutions that had already saved Metropolitan Healthcare millions of dollars and countless hours of inefficiency. Dr. Michael Chen from Pacific Medical Group raised his hand. "Claire, can the platform integrate with legacy systems? Our infrastructure is a mix of different vendors and vintages." "Integration is one of the platform's key strengths," I responded, switching to a technical diagram. "The adaptive algorithms can work with any data structure, translating between systems and creating unified analytics across your entire network." By the meeting's end, all 3 organizations had committed to pilot programs. The combined value of the initial contracts exceeded $20 million, with potential for exponential growth as the platform proved its worth. Greg was conspicuously absent from the meeting. He had been assigned to troubleshoot server issues in the basement, the same basement where I had developed the very technology now transforming our company's future. The symmetry was perfect. That evening, I remained at my desk to review the contracts and prepare for the implementation phase. The office was quiet, most employees having departed for the weekend. I was reviewing technical specifications when I noticed a familiar figure approaching my workspace. Greg looked older than his 47 years, his silver hair disheveled and his expensive suit wrinkled. The confident bearing that had once intimidated junior employees was gone, replaced by the uncertain posture of someone whose world had collapsed. "Claire," he said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Can we talk?" I leaned back in my chair, studying him. "Of course. What's on your mind?" I wanted to apologize. About the proposal, about NextGen. I made mistakes. "You made choices," I corrected. "You chose to steal my work while publicly dismissing it. You chose to prioritize your ego over the company's interests. You chose to underestimate me." He flinched at my words. "I know I can't undo what happened, but I hoped we could find a way to work together moving forward." "We are working together," I replied. "You're maintaining the systems that support the platform I developed. It's exactly the kind of incremental work you once told me was most important." The conversation was over. Greg understood that his career at Lunaris would never recover from his betrayal. He had gambled everything on stealing my innovation and had lost spectacularly. Now he would spend his remaining time at the company watching my success, knowing that his dismissal of my risky proposal had cost him everything. 6 months later, the adaptive platform was running in 47 healthcare facilities across 12 states. The revenue exceeded all projections, and Lunaris had become the industry leader in predictive healthcare analytics. Magazine articles credited the breakthrough to innovative thinking and bold leadership, though they rarely mentioned the months of nighttime development or the corporate betrayal that had nearly killed the project. I stood in my new office, larger and better appointed than Greg's former space, reviewing reports from our newest client installations. The platform was evolving exactly as I had predicted, learning from each implementation and becoming more sophisticated with every deployment. My phone buzzed with an incoming call from Dr. Sarah Mitchell at Houston General Hospital. Her facility was considering adopting the platform for their emergency department operations, a challenging application that would require significant customization. "Claire," she said, her voice carrying the urgency typical of emergency medicine administrators. "I've been following your work with Metropolitan and Pacific Medical. We have a unique situation here that might benefit from your adaptive approach." I settled into my chair, prepared for another long technical discussion. "Tell me about your challenges, Dr. Mitchell." "Our emergency department sees over 200 patients daily, with demand patterns that seem completely random. Current staffing models are inadequate, and we're either overstaffed during quiet periods or overwhelmed during surges. Traditional analytics haven't helped because the variables are too complex and interconnected." This was exactly the type of problem the platform was designed to solve. Emergency departments represented the ultimate test of adaptive analytics, environments where small improvements in efficiency could literally save lives. "Dr. Mitchell," I said, opening a new project file on my computer. "I think we can help you. The platform's strength is finding patterns in apparent chaos. Emergency departments are actually highly predictable once you understand the underlying variables." As I began outlining potential solutions, I caught sight of Greg through my office window. He was walking through the main workspace, carrying a box of equipment toward the elevator. His shoulders were slumped, his movements mechanical. The investigation had concluded, and his employment had been terminated. I watched him disappear into the elevator, feeling neither satisfaction nor pity. Greg had created his own downfall through arrogance and theft. My success was not revenge, it was simply the natural result of persistence, talent, and the courage to pursue innovation despite institutional resistance. The elevator doors closed, and I returned my attention to Dr. Mitchell's requirements. The platform's next evolution was already taking shape in my mind. and there was work to be done. Dr. Mitchell, I continued, let's schedule a site visit. I want to see your operation firsthand before we design the optimization protocols. A rejected proposal had become a thriving business line. A dismissed idea had redefined an entire industry. And the person who had been foolish enough to underestimate both had learned the cost of that mistake. The platform was just the beginning. Each success opened new possibilities. Each implementation revealed new opportunities for innovation. The company that had once considered my work too risky was now betting its future on the technology that had emerged from those late nights in the basement. My phone rang again. Another potential client eager to discuss how adaptive analytics could transform their operations. I answered with the confidence of someone who had learned that the most powerful revenge against dismissal was simply proving them wrong. Spectacularly, permanently, and profitably wrong.